political analyst Ralph Mateja joins us now as we continue with our rolling coverage of today's breaking news. Thanks very much for coming through. I know we had you for something else, but we're here now. Good to see you. You know, let's start with, I mean, as Kathy just read, in his letter, certainly from what the presidency is telling us, he said he was stepping aside for the sake of our country and the movement to which he belongs. What do you make of that? Because the only reason they would have isolated those particular words is because it's something they know would also resonate with him, or at least at a public level. Your sense?
Well, I think that that actually means that he's aware that he's become a weaker link in President Ramaphosa's presidency, and I think he has become an outright liability. I mean, he could not even stand properly in Parliament because of personal problems that actually came at the same time as official problems as well. The finding by the court that he lied, the public protector's finding on that as well. So he tried. He tried to, I mean, I read that story. I mean, I read that story very clearly, and I think that he can fight back if he wants to engage.
No, what I'm saying is, do you really believe that he acted in the interests of the ANC?
Yes.
And in the interests of the country? Do you believe that?
He was isolated, Vuyo. He tried to fight back. If that was the main consideration, if that was the reason why he resigned, he should have resigned much earlier.
That's exactly my point. So there would have been other reasons that compelled him to resign.
People have been calling for him to leave office, and I think also he was just becoming clearly a liability to President Ramaphosa. He was becoming isolated. He tried to fight back. It just didn't work. He kept on saying he wanted to clear his name about the allegation, the finding actually, not even an allegation, that he actually lied. And some have been saying that, fine, you could do that outside government. At this point in time, you need to give the president space to actually be free from having to respond to your allegations, problems of impropriety, allegations of impropriety on his side. Clearly, he tried to fight back. But I also think that we should also give credit to Nhlanhla Nene here. The Nhlanhla Nene president set the bar very high, I think, in government. We have not seen that before. Of course, the allegations around Nhlanhla Nene were quite serious, but I think his willingness to step aside, it is what has set the precedent that a lot will have to step aside. And I think that the president is in a position where he could, I think he must have said to Gigaba that, look, I cannot save you. I cannot salvage you. This is just undoable. There is no other way. I don't think, it does not come across as someone who actually believed that he had to step aside for the side of the country. But Vuyo, we will take that as a country, I think.
You know, Annika Lassen, you know, you were listening to what she was saying there. She was talking about how people over the past couple of weeks within the ANC, presumably, were telling her that as much as the president is serious about cleaning up, right, he doesn't want the ANC to be cleaned out, you know, at the same time.
It is a serious dilemma here. I mean, we don't use the presidential system in this country. The ANC has to win elections, and the president cannot win elections with the ANC that is not in a good standing. And I think that the president has got the dilemma here. Members of ANC compromised, and when those members are facing questions in the public space, it actually affects the integrity of the ANC. And
but see, that exactly takes me to where I wanted us to go, because you had a Malusi who didn't want to resign because he was worried that it's then going to derail his political progress, right? You also have President Ramaphosa, who wants to win an election in 5 months' time, and realizes that there's this thing that's hanging like an albatross around the ANC's neck, and he's got to deal with that. But he also wants to have his cake in a different way to the way Malusi Gigaba is doing it. He also wants to have his cake and eat it. In other words, I want the cleanup, but it mustn't damage the ANC. Can he get it both ways?
This is a dilemma for you. Most of the times you listen to President Ramaphosa and you listen to some senior officials within the ANC. They speak different language. This is the president who goes out and say that, hey, I'm willing to go to the state capture inquiry and push this anti-corruption, and I'm willing to come out as clean. Unfortunately, the party keeps on taking a hit because the party is the one that is actually suffering here in terms of its integrity, its reputation in the eyes of the people. So ought to be a balance. Mr. Ramaphosa, the difficulty for him is to come out and promise South Africans what he promised when he ran for the presidency of the ANC. Remember, when he ran for the presidency of the ANC, Vuyo, he did not run it exclusively internally within the ANC.
Yes.
He made a whole lot of promises outside the ANC. This is the first time, actually, in my view, that I've seen the president of the ANC being so much worried about how he's being perceived outside the ANC. But unfortunately, there have to be a balance there. He cannot become too squeaky clean to the detriment of the ANC as well. There ought to be a balance, and I think that if you look at the resignation of the likes of Malusi Gigaba,
what is this thing that he has to be worried about or that he fears?
He cannot, technically, he needs the ANC to go into the election. Look at what is happening in Northwest, for example. If you push anti-corruption too actively to a point where the party cannot hold up, you need the very same party to campaign. You cannot campaign without the party. You need the branches of the party to actually campaign. You cannot afford people within the ANC staging a mutiny that actually undermines the ability of the party to campaign behind you as President Ramaphosa. And I think that that is where that balance comes in. It's more about to what extent is he willing to pursue this cleanup within the ANC? Where does he draw the line?
So it's only to an extent?
It shouldn't clearly...
he can't go the whole hog.
He cannot. Let me put it this way. I don't even think he's going at it actively. I think that the level of anti-corruption in South Africa and the level of corruption that had set in South Africa was so bad that he doesn't have to do much actively. All he has to do is situations such as Gigaba, where he's saying that, look, I cannot save you. However, also, I cannot come forward to try to put a good word for you with the nation. So it's more of an easier work for him. There is a balance. It's an easier work. And I believe that there might be some within the ANC who believe that the president is also betraying the ANC because he has got an obligation as the president of the ANC to defend the ANC. That is why, in my mind now, I don't see the ANC, where is it as an institution? I don't see it very much. I see individuals popping up. I see the president of the ANC, whose reputation seems to be higher than that of the party. Is this a tenable situation? Is it workable going into the election?
Which brings us
to
an argument that you've made this week, that perhaps we may as well look at moving towards a presidential system where the people will directly, elect their president. Do you see that coming?
We are doing that. We just haven't changed the institution in my mind. We have not configured the institution. I mean, look at President Ramaphosa. In my view, even the polls indicate that he's very popular, almost more popular, even if it can be momentary going into the election, more popular than brand ANC. And I think that a lot of people who might be voting for the ANC in the 2019 election, they will not be voting for the ANC because the institution has got strength, have got that internal coherence of strength. The ANC is in a crisis when it comes to institutional strength. But I think they'll be voting for the ANC mostly because the ANC happens to have the president who has a sense of right or wrong. So people will be voting on the basis of that presidential system, I think, even if the system that we use institutionally, we are not using that system. So my view here is that why can't we just go ahead and do it? My view is because of lack of coherence within institutions. I mean, the reason why you have the proportional representation party list is because parties are strong, they exert accountability on the individuals. But we cannot say that. Most of the parties in South Africa, institutionally, and this is not just the ANC, it's the EFF, it is the DA as well. They seem to be weak institutionally while having individual leaders within those parties very strong. Why can't people decide whether or not they vote Mr. Malema and not worry about the EFF, or vote Mr. Maimane and not worry about the DA? Because I believe they're doing the same thing when it comes to Mr. Ramaphosa in the next election.
But will that find resonance among ANC cadres, many of whom, and it's not all of them, so probably not even most of them, but many of whom know that they can get to certain positions or belong to specific classes in society only because of, in the main, because of their association with the ANC. Because if they were to go out there and compete equally with other people, without being heavyweights or, senior members of the ANC, then they wouldn't be in the jobs or positions, or they wouldn't have access to the kinds of resources that they often have.
10 years ago, Vuyo, 10 years ago, ANC cadres will make that case. But now, I think they should also take responsibility for allowing the institutional makeup of the party, the ANC, to deteriorate to a point where it lost recourse on its own members. I mean, the ANC lost recourse on its own members. They couldn't remove their own controversial president, President Jacob Zuma. They struggled to a point where his tenure had to come to a natural end within the ANC.
So how do they do it, though? What do they do? Because you look at the Integrity Commission, it's been reduced to nothing. In spite of all the noises of like...
Institutionally, the party is weak. Cadres have got no case to make because they did not even show ability to build the institutional strength of the ANC. And now, in my view, the ANC is riding on the reputation of an individual. And I think that the whole idea of collective responsibility, as we know it through the ANC, it has collapsed. And let people vote for the president. People are going now, I think, in this 2019 election, those who are going to be voting for the party, I think a greater majority of those people will be thinking more about the president. And they will be wanting accountability from the president. But now, institutionally, they're going to... The ANC can come forth and say that, look, you voted for the party, and then we are collectively accountable. Collective accountability, it's not working, Vuyo.
Where does that put those who don't want him?
Those who don't want him, well, they can...
Within the ANC?
Those who don't want him, of course, they are fighting within the ANC. Those who don't want him within the ANC, there is internal democracy. They can wait for the next elective conference of the party and bid for whoever they want within the party, so that that person they want within the party can preside. The reality is that institutionally, it just makes no sense to keep on talking about the party as if it is capable of presiding upon individuals now. That system, Vuyo, has collapsed, and we have to wake up to that reality.
Ralph Matekha, thanks very much for coming through and for your insights this evening. Political analyst Ralph Matekha, on the back, of course, of the resignation of Malusi Gigaba.